Cyril Gane, Francis Ngannou, targeted for January. All right. That sounds like a long ways away because you're talking next year. It's not as bad as you might think. I mean, you're talking about 4 months, you're talking about 5 months. You realize where we're at in 2021? Because it keeps blowing my mind. Like these last 12 and 15 months, everything's been off. Everything that I use as a parameter, I'll use wrestling season by example. Wrestling season gets pushed 4 months later than it generally is. So any reference point that I have for where we're at in the year, look, kids are about to start school again. It's unbelievable where we're at in 2021. I digress, but to the topic that these guys are going to match up in 5 months, pretty reasonable time frame. And don't forget how that works. That's not just a matter of somebody's not ready or somebody's kicking the can. You have X amount of dates if you're Dana. You have X amount of main events. You have X amount of maneuvering to do and attempting to guess. Right, there was one point where Dana was saying, look, if we could do this thing in France, which is a possibility, we're going to look to do it. So I just bring up the point of some of the moving parts that go into it that none of us have to consider. Okay, great, these guys are going to fight in 4 to 5 months. Pretty reasonable time frame. Here's a question for you. Which one of the, because you're going to break down who you think is going to win. And a lot of things is going to be very lazy. Well, Francis because he's so big, or Cyril because he moves so well. Think of it in a different perspective. Which one of these guys, in your estimation, fight over fight, is improving more? That's a hard answer. That's a hard one to credit. When Francis got on his run, take anything post Derek Lewis for Francis. When Francis got on that run, he was beating guys so quickly and so handily. It was one shot. The only thing you had to start the stopwatch for was how long until he lands that one shot. But it was one shot, one after the next. Killers, great fighters, former champions. You didn't get to see very much. Sure is impressive. I'm not seeing the skill. So then we start hearing. Francis is in the gym. He's working on grappling nonstop. He learned a lesson from Stipe. He's working on getting up off the bottom nonstop. We're hearing these things. We don't get to see them. Then Francis fights Stipe. We do see him. There was only one scramble. But it happened nonetheless, and that 4 to 5 seconds told us every rumor we've heard about Francis is true. Every rumor that he's working on grappling, that he's working on his sprawl, getting his hips back, staying on his feet, working up to get to the bottom, were true. Major takeaway, and then again, you've got the stopwatch to look for that one big shot. Comes about 7 minutes in, and we've got a new champion. Look at Cyril. Very impressive things on paper. The fact that Cyril Gane has never been taken down is very interesting. And leading into any other opponent, use John Jones, who's a moving part. That would be a really incredible stat. Because while Cyril has never been taken down, John has never fought an opponent who John hasn't taken down. It would be interesting. You'd have a real back and forth and what's going to happen here. We're likely to see Cyril on bottom for the first time. Can he get up? Does he got a guard? Get right. You'd have some fun. You'd have something to talk about. Not terribly relevant against Francis because Francis isn't going to take him down. Isn't even going to try. So now we understand pretty clearly what we have to deal with, which is a stand-up fight. What happens? And so many people will talk about who the better boxer is. That's a piece of it. You can bring that to the table. But in MMA, you really want to know who's a better kickboxer. Hard to say. These two sparred together. I thought it was recent. There was some footage that went around. It was Instagram. They were at Extreme Couture sparring. Not true, apparently. Apparently, that footage that went around is from many, many years ago. I don't know how much I believe that, by the way. Only because these guys, they didn't look younger. They look like the same guys. But they are denying, for whatever reasons, that they are current workout partners or that they have sparred together. Their story, for whatever reason, is that they did stand-up training together in France a number of years ago when they both still had the goal of being professional boxers and not even looking to MMA. I feel as though something there is lost in translation because I feel that that is just simply not true, and we have video evidence to say otherwise, but they're both sticking to the story. Okay. I asked Randy about that. Randy, I saw some footage going around. I thought it was Extreme Couture. I thought these two were working out. I thought it was in your gym, and it was just on Instagram about 2 months ago. I assumed it was done around the time it was posted. Randy said, no, absolutely not. Said Francis comes in all the time, gets workouts. I work out with him. Love him, great guy. Cyril does not come in. Okay. So whatever was going around, whoever posted that was from Extreme Couture in a reasonable period of time, fake news. Fine. But if you do want to talk about who is improving, and that's very relevant, to be really good, to be a great, both of them got belts that say champion on it, they qualify as greats. Who's getting better does matter. Like if you were to go back and watch a series of Jon Jones tapes, one commonality you're going to find, you go watch 5 Jon Jones fights. One commonality you're going to see fight to fight is that Jon is now better. Jon would come out in every single fight and do a move or a technique that he had never done before. I don't know if any clearer example than the night he locks up with Glover Teixeira and 15 seconds in, Jon just locks his own hands and rips Glover's bicep off the bone. Like Jon will go make things up in the ring or gets an idea in the back ahead of time. I'm going to go try this. Then he was so good, he did do it. But if you watch 5 Jon Jones fights, the big commonality and takeaway that you're going to have, it's not going to be the spinning elbows. It's not going to be those takedowns. It's going to be, he's getting better. Whatever it is you sit down and you prepare for is not what you're going to be facing. Whatever you think you know about Jon Jones, the guy you step in there with is going to be even better. Scary thought. Impressive. I think Francis shows that. Even though Francis was dusting and eliminating guys quickly, I think that 5-second scramble he had with Stipe, in conjunction with all the reports that we have of him working with nothing but the best ground guys to get up off getting that underhook, getting his hip down, getting off the bottom, and stopping from ever being taken down in the first place, I think they were true. I felt like I saw it in that 5 seconds. Many of those things could be said about Cyril. He's just in a different realm. Being a really great kickboxer and then going out and showing really great kickboxing within MMA is not the same thing. It's a different language. Number of guys who have done it that are greats. Ray Sefo comes to mind. Tyrone Spong comes to mind. You could go back to the first kickboxer to ever put the sport of kickboxing on the map, Maurice Smith. But those guys would all tell you that I'm right, that you got to get used to doing that kickboxing within MMA. And I feel that that's what we've really seen from Cyril. Maybe the Derek fight showed that better than anything else. Cyril was a big guy. He was a good athlete. He understood competition. He was pretty calm out there. He was going to bring his skills, but he still wasn't comfortable. That was more of a talking point. That was more making that statement to make it become true. I felt like in the fight with Derek Lewis, it had become true. And moreover, one of the reasons, and it's extremely relevant that I prove this point to you, one of the reasons that Cyril looked so good with striking against Derek Lewis is Cyril, at least within his own heart and mind, did not have the same threat of being taken down. And if you agree with me that that's true, if you agree with me that one of the reasons that Cyril could get those kicks and those strikes off against Derek is because he did not, talking about Cyril now, he did not have the threat, the belief that his opponent was going to try or have success taking him down. You now have to couple that when Cyril fights Francis and put a point in Cyril's box, because Francis is not going to try to take him down. So if Cyril can be loose, and this is about him being loose and letting those things go, you have to understand, Francis is going to play that game. But Francis will put you out with one punch. I don't know if you could say that about Cyril, right? When you talk about who's better, what are we talking about there? What are we saying? And martial arts has a belt system. That system, white belt, blue belt, brown belt, black belt, that system is based on understanding and application of certain techniques. You can be a black belt that's never done competition, but you have mastered techniques. you can show them and demonstrate them to your professor who will elevate you a belt rank. That's the way it works. So if you come to the conclusion that Cyril's the better, this is going to be a kickboxing fight, which you're likely to come to that conclusion, you would be right, and you determine that Cyril is the better kickboxer, fine. Doesn't mean he's going to win. He could come out and flow. He could be beautiful with combinations and finish with a kick and teep you to the belly. He could look better. Francis hits you one time, Francis will win. If anyone gets bullish on this fight, if anyone gets passionate and they start arguing about who's going to who's going to win between Cyril and Francis, they get passionate on it. At best, they will be right on luck. You have a 50%. There's only two guys. You pick one of them, you got a 50% chance. If you got the track record of Chael, you're likely to get it wrong, but the point is the same. It really isn't about who's better, not with 4-ounce gloves on. Who hits who? Where do they hit them? Cyril comes to the body. Cyril digs to the legs. Francis is going to still be standing. Francis hits Cyril in the mouth. That fight can be over. It's very fascinating. And by the way, a lot of the things that would apply from a very lazy approach, which is Francis is bigger and therefore he's going to be stronger, or Cyril is lighter and therefore he's going to be quicker, they really don't translate in this case. Like Francis, as big as he is, does not have speed issues against anybody. I've thought many times Francis is going to be in for it because of the speed. I could use Stipe Part 2. Now, in hindsight, Stipe didn't have quite, it just wasn't quite enough man. There just wasn't not quite enough size there. Francis is very different, man. He's very different. He can take a shot. He's only got to give one. So when you talk about who's better, what are you talking about? Are you talking about who's got the skills in the traditional sense, where they could demonstrate the applications, or are you talking about pure effectiveness, which is one missile straight down the middle, we all go home?